Hi, Tina Peters here.
See, today they go back to you if you're investigating. Yeah. That was
Hey, cool. Well, I guess I will be hosting this for today. I've got a lot to talk about regarding what Tina has had to go through here and the recent news, the writ of habeas corpus that was filed. I want to actually spend some time to go through that because I've been dealing with this so personally from almost day one when Tina ended up at the symposium, that first Lindell symposium where I first met her backstage. And it's been a wild ride since, but I've been in a unique position because I've been in the background in all this, and I've seen all these different plays, actions, behaviors, and happenings that a lot of people have not experienced. So, what I want to do is I want to go over the writ of habeas corpus that was filed. I want to explain it to everyone. And then I'm going to go over how I have been involved in some of these and what my perspective is on all this. Um, I'm real frustrated. I actually just saw this morning an update that Tina was put in solitary confinement for 27 days. And I haven't been able to confirm that that's the case, but I think it might be. It's absolutely disgusting what these people are doing to such a wonderful American patriot. Just a good citizen, honest, courageous, trying to do the right thing for the citizens that she represents. And as any clerk, uh, they should never ever be persecuted like Tina has been for not only protecting their citizens' voting system, voting information, but trying to expose something and being a whistleblower should never ever result in someone being put through what Tina's been put through, put into jail, and then, following an 8.5 year prison sentence for nonviolent crimes. I don't really even think it was a crime. Um, and these people just don't care. They literally are using Tina in order to scare every other election official in the country. That's what they're doing. In fact, Judge Barrett even said that her sentence was to deter others, which is incredible. And maybe we'll play that sentencing again. And in fact, I think that wouldn't be the worst of ideas. It's about a 19-minute long, uh, but it's so important for everyone to listen to that sentencing because it really displays how horribly evil these people are. And I have no idea how Barrett sleeps at night saying the things that he said. Um, Even if someone was confused about the situation, they would not behave like Barrett did in court in the things that he said to Tina, accused Tina of, and then sentenced Tina to. It's just not normal. And I have shared that sentencing video with a lot of people who had not seen it yet. And literally, I've seen jaws drop, hit the table, people stand up, start pacing, just turn beet red in anger that this kind of thing could happen in this country. So hopefully we can pull that up. Paulo, it's probably around that same video of Jerry Wood, and we're going to talk about that one as well. It's about a minute and 30 seconds of Gerald Wood. Thank you. A minute and 30 seconds of Gerald Wood basically perjuring himself. And I want to go into some detail on that. Now, on the letmytinago.us, that website, we did an event on the 8th. And I just had an idea a couple weeks ago that I wanted to bring Tina back into the spotlight, and I wanted to bring all the experts together and all the people that had dealings with Tina from the beginning, and kind of take it all the way through from day one, essentially, all the way to current. And it was a great 9-hour event. If you have not seen that at letmytinago.us, go to that site. The video's on there. It's about 9-hour long day. Tina even surprises us in the middle of that with a call from jail. So we get to actually hear her and talk to her. And we also show two great videos, um, the documentary Selection Code and the documentary Let My People Go by Professor David Clements. And what I'll do here on this background, let me just pull that up here real quick. That is, let's see here, letmytinago.us. So this is it here, and we've got the video you can play right there. The agenda, what we talked about is we had an introduction in prayer, we had a roundtable, then we jumped into the MESA reports and went through each of those reports. Then we had the Selection Code documentary. Then we jump into the roundtable again, talk to the other experts. These are some of the people that were there. That was great. It was hosted by Joe Hoft and Professor Clements. We had Clay Parikh and Doug Frank, Jeff O'Donnell, myself, Sean Smith, and Walter Doherty. And then we went into Tina's fight, the legal perspective of it. We went and watched Let My People Go, talked about the road ahead, and we had a closing in prayer. And Tina jumped in there somewhere, and we had an amazing group of pastors at the end pray over Tina all together. So great event. All right. So let's do this. I think we'll start with, let's jump right in to the sentencing because everything is going to be based off that sentencing. So if you could roll that, Apollo, that would be great. And then we'll dive in because I want to go over some things that were said by that judge.
All right, we're here today for sentencing in Ms. Peters' case. Before I get into my comments, I'll enter judgment of conviction consistent with the jury's verdicts as to counts 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. As it relates to fines, fees, and costs, a $2,000 fine will be ordered as to counts 1, 2, 4, 6. As to counts 8, the maximum fine will be imposed. Counts 9 and 10, $1,000 fines will be imposed. You retain the right to ask me to reconsider any sentence I impose under Rule 35B. You have the right to appeal any sentence I impose. If you want to end this judgments of conviction, if you wish to do that, you need to do it within 49 days of today's date. The protection orders will remain in place during the life of this sentence. Conditions 6 and 7 are vacated. However, you can ask your lawyer what that means. If you are ever sentenced or today sentenced to the Department of Corrections, then I'm required to inform you that the time I actually impose or that may be imposed is not the amount of time you are likely to serve. It can be and very likely will be reduced by your accrual of good time and earned time credits within the department, meaning that the better you do in prison, the more programming you take advantage of, the sooner you'll be released. I want to circle back to the request from earlier today in terms of the motion for a new trial based on a Brady violation. To the extent I needed to make findings on that today, I'll note that 1, the motion could have been filed weeks ago. 2, the information generally was known to the defense prior to trial, perhaps not the specifics, but enough to have at least mustered some questioning of witnesses at trial. And 3, that a Brady violation is one that generally involves, almost exclusively involves, the withholding of exculpatory evidence that may be used by the defendant in a case. When looking at such a violation, the court looks at that type of evidence with through the lens of a defense attorney, not through a prosecutor, such that it's not the prosecutor's job to determine what is or isn't exculpatory. It's the defendant's job to make those decisions. Here, the argument is that back on, I believe, June 25th, Ms. Peters went to the clerk and recorder's not office, but where the ballot box is located, some distance, I don't know if it's 100 feet or not, away from the actual physical office. She went there with at least one camera person. It looks like maybe someone else was also there with her. Apparently she was voting. She had some conversations, according to the affidavit that's been drafted for her arrest in that case, with election officials who would be employees of the clerk and recorder's office, which she was not allowed to have conversations with. Her presence was noted by Ms. Bance, one of the witnesses in this case, who alerted law enforcement, who then did the investigation that resulted in everything I just said being uncovered and ultimately that warrant being drafted. The defense made some requests for that information. Once through the police department, it was denied. According to the defendant, because it was an ongoing investigation, the DA said that they didn't have anything, if I'm not mistaken, but that they would turn it over later when they got it. They didn't do so. Looks like the warrant was drafted well after the trial occurred. So it is well settled that for the purposes of discovery, evidence that could be used to impeach a witness, motivations, the like, would fall under a Brady type of requirement to be disclosed. But as I said earlier, there's quite literally nothing that's been provided to me that suggests anything in this arrest warrant or that what Ms. Bance said, who was an important witness to the prosecution, would be construed objectively or even subjectively through the lens of a defense attorney as favorable or exculpatory to the defendant, particularly where there's video footage of the interaction that occurred between the defendant and the individuals who may have been employees of the clerk and recorder's office. So Ms. Bance's mere reporting of the same to law enforcement is what it is, and certainly in any event, to the extent there was exculpatory value to it, as the case law says, it was incredibly minimal and could not undermine the confidence in the verdict. I'll nevertheless let the people respond to it, and to the extent I might not be divested of jurisdiction to consider it, hold a hearing on the same if I find one is warranted after further briefing. I make that record, just to close that loop for the purposes of any appeal issue that might come up in the future. The purposes of sentencing have been alluded to, particularly by the prosecution. I'm not going to repeat them all, but I say generally the same thing. That is, the purposes are statutory, and they include, but are not limited to, promoting the acceptance of responsibility. That doesn't mean that a defendant has to take responsibility. To the contrary, Ms. Peters has exercised her right to a jury trial. She's exercised her right to hold the people to their burden, and such cannot and will not be used by this court as a means by which, or justification by which, to punish her, but rather the sentence itself is to promote the responsibility acceptance, not to ensure that someone takes responsibility, however, once they've chosen to exercise their right to go to trial. I consider deterrence in sentencing, that is, both general and specific, that the sentence I imposed must deter Ms. Peters from engaging in similar conduct in the future, but it also must deter others generally from engaging in this type of conduct. I consider rehabilitation where appropriate. I consider punishment where appropriate. I also must ensure that the sentences I impose are consistent among offenders similarly situated, but I must also impose a sentence that is designed to meet Ms. Peters' unique needs. Here, the defense has, and Ms. Peters in particular, has remained quite defiant, which is her right, but certainly not helpful for her lot today. And in arguing why I should impose a particular sentence, she tells me about her ailments, her loss, her struggles in life. But in reality, for those of you who may have been here earlier this morning and seen some of the folks who've occupied that chair before Ms. Peters, there could be not much in the way of a comparison in terms of the type of sympathy one would extend to Ms. Peters. Those folks didn't have 4 lawyers representing them. They didn't have a team of assistants helping them. They're not getting rides in private jets all over the country. No, the people who sit in that chair suffer, generally speaking, immeasurable trauma in life, struggle mightily with alcohol abuse, substance abuse, mental health struggles, family loss. They come from broken homes. The cards they were dealt were never the cards that you were dealt, Miss Peters. So when I hear you discuss your husband, who sadly passed away recently, your family struggles, and your son, who served our country admirably and made the ultimate sacrifice, I consider it. And I note too that he honored his oath to the country, something that is not lost on me when considering the circumstances under which you find yourself. Your age, limited criminal history, and the like are certainly somewhat mitigating. Your ties to the community are what they are, but your reputation at this point is poor because of what you've done here and after. Your lies are well documented, and these convictions are serious. I'm convinced you would do it all over again if you could. You're as defiant as a defendant as this court has ever seen. You don't have those histories of drug and alcohol abuse. There's no lifetime of trauma, not even close to the type of mitigating circumstances I would see from many folks who sit in that chair. No, to the contrary, Ms. Peters, you are a privileged person. You are as privileged as they come. And you use that privilege to obtain power, a following, and fame. And to be sure, there's no doubt in my mind that it's exactly what you wanted, and it defies all sense of common sense to believe when you suggested to me a few moments ago that you didn't want this attention. No, you crave it, ma'am. And there is no one in this courtroom who would consider that to be anything other than the absolute truth. But to get to the point of what it is that you did here, it's my impression distinctly that you never took your job of clerking particularly seriously. You didn't complete the certification. One scandal after another followed you in your time as the clerk. And ultimately, it was a belief that the echo chamber in which you live couldn't be wrong, among other things, that led you to do what you did here. This thought process, unfortunately, seems to consume so many in our country, regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, or the like, that what it is we hear and think can't possibly be wrong. There are many things in my mind that are crystal clear about this case. You are no hero, you abused your position, and you're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again. In your world, it's all about you. But at bottom, this case was about your corrupt conduct and how no one is above the law. No one in this country has absolute power. Your position as a clerk and recorder, a constitutional position, does not provide you with a means by which to do your own investigation, to not listen to the judiciary, to not listen to the executives higher than you, to not listen to the legislature who sets the law as it may be. This is nonsense. Our system of government can't function when people in government think that somehow, some way, the power they've been given is absolute in all respects. And that's where you fell. You have no respect for the checks and balances of government. You have no respect for this court. You have no respect for law enforcement. And you do not have respect for your fellow colleagues when you were a clerk and recorder who weren't lockstep in your beliefs. Period. Indeed, just weeks before trial, you were apparently doing what I mentioned earlier, that is, over at the clerk and recorder's office where you're not supposed to be, violating the protection order by speaking to employees of that entity with your camera crew in tow. You have no qualms with violating the court's orders because you're innocent, because you didn't do anything wrong. You were just doing your job. You have no problem trying to kick an officer. Your explanation about what happened is preposterous. It's on video. You have no problem lying to officers. It's happened multiple times. They're recorded conversations. It's just more lies. No objective person believes them. No At the end of the day, you cared about the jets, the podcasts, and the people fawning over you. You abdicated your position as a servant to the Constitution, and you chose you over all else. Yes, you are a charlatan, and you cannot help but lie as easy it is for you to breathe. You betrayed your oath for no one other than you. And this is what makes Miss Peters such a danger to our community. It's the position she held that has provided her the pulpit from which she can preach these lies. The undermining of our democratic process, the undermining of the belief and confidence in our election systems. It's not about questioning it. No one says you can't question, you can't ask. It's completely different. And if you don't understand that distinction, then there's nothing I can say or do here today that will change your mind. So the damage that is caused and continue to be caused is just as bad, if not worse, than the physical violence that this court sees on an all too regular basis. And it's particularly damaging when those words come from someone who holds a position of influence like you. Every effort to undermine the integrity of our elections and public's trust in our institutions has been made by you. You've done it from that lectern the voting public provided you with. Everything you've done has been done to retain control, influence. The damage is immeasurable. And every time it gets refuted, every time it's shown to be false, just another tale is weaved. So I'll begin by saying I've considered all of those purposes of staying of an execution of a sentence. I've mentioned all of them here generally in my comments already, and I find that a stay of any sentence I impose would be wholly unwarranted. All cases have a possibility of reversal on appeal, no doubt. I'm at peace with all of the decisions I've made here. If anything, I gave you and your counsel far too much leeway at times, but the rulings I made came after much consideration, incredible amounts of internal debate, and I trust in accordance with the applicable law. I consider the sentence here, in this case, what are available to me. Probation. Community corrections wasn't requested, but it wouldn't be an option in any event, and an incarcerative sentence to the Department of Corrections. Probation's focus is rehabilitation. That is, for folks who have minimal criminal histories, low LSI scores like you, Ms. Peters, but where punishment isn't really on the table. It's about putting someone back in the community who's not at risk and giving them a chance to correct those things that brought them before me in the first place. Community corrections, which again isn't available, but nevertheless I'll mention, is another option that I could still order. It's much more stringent than probation, but it's not prison. And it's for folks who have even higher needs. Again, drug addicts, alcohol abusers, and the like. And prison is for those folks where we send people who are a danger to all of us. Whether it be by the pen or the sword or the word of the mouth. Prison is where folks go, where punishment is what we're focused on, because the crime committed is so significant that anything less would unduly mitigate the seriousness of the same. I mentioned before there are no mental health concerns. There's no good reason why you're here, Ms. Peters, other than these are all the active decisions that you made that cost our county significantly, but also more importantly, cost you greatly, Mr. Wood, all the members of the county who worked and trusted you when you asked them to do things that they did on your behalf. It's part of your lies. The expense, the toll is immeasurable. So putting you on probation when you have zero needs that would be met by probation is the very definition of unduly depreciating the significance of what it is that you've done here, the harm that you've caused our community and continue to cause. Community corrections is the same, so prison is the only place that duly meets the purposes of sentencing in this matter. And therefore, the sentence and judgment of the court is as follows. As to counts 1 and 4, the judgment and sentence of the court is 3.5 years in the Department of Corrections. Those sentences will be concurrent to each other. As to count 2, The judgment and sentence of the court is 3.5 years consecutive to counts 1 and 4. As it relates to the misdemeanor charges, count 8 is 120 days in the Mesa County Detention Facility, concurrent to count 9 and 10, which will be 6 months in the Mesa County Detention Facility, consecutive to the prison sentence. The reason those sentences are consecutive is because those sentences are, as the prosecution stated, directly related to what it is that you did here in our community, the damage you caused this community, the breach of your oath to the electorate in Mesa County. Your sentence will be followed by 3 years of parole. You have 2 days of pre-sentence confinement credit. Anything I missed? Anything else we need to address?
Judge, I think you missed a sentencing on count 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Count 6 is criminal impersonation. That's also consecutive. That's 15 months to the Department of Corrections.
And the cost.
So it's 8.5 years total, plus the 6 months for a total of 9 years of incarceration.
I appreciate that. All right. Pretty unbelievable. If you hadn't heard that before, I'm sure you're just as shocked as everyone that's heard the time. And every time I hear it, it makes me more angry. So let's go through this. I took some notes about it. So what he'd mentioned is at first that she had gone to vote and had talked to election officials that she was not supposed to talk to with a camera crew in tow. I don't know what the circumstances were with that, but if she went to vote, you probably do have to talk to people when you're going to vote to check in and get a ballot and whatnot. So I think that's pretty ridiculous. The media was used to turn the entire county against Tina as well, which is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this woman in her retired years took on a duty to work and serve on behalf of her citizens in Mesa County. She does that. She whistleblows. She exposes something that bad actors don't want exposed. And then these sick people use the media of all types, not only in Mesa County, but all over the state of Colorado and all over the country, but heavily focused in Mesa County to specifically turn people against Tina. So they're just average citizens that really think Tina is a criminal because they heard it repeatedly from the media, but they don't really know the details. They don't understand them. So that's why it's really important for all of us to help educate everyone so they truly know what Tina has gone through, what she really did, and they don't just blindly believe what the media just keeps shoving in their face over and over again. He said he considered rehab punishment, that he considered a similar sentence to then also meet Miss Peters' unique needs. Like she needs a sentence is what he's implying, claiming that she remained defiant. Well, I'll tell you what, if I knew the truth, I would remain defiant also if people were trying to tell me that the truth that I know is untrue. Why would anyone cave to that? I will never cave to that. I told Tina when I first met her that I will examine those images and I will stand right beside her shouting what the truth is, no matter who doesn't want to hear it. And that's exactly what Tina did as well. And I'm going to do the same thing because the truth is the truth. And I don't care if people don't want to see it or if the truth makes them uncomfortable or shines a light where they don't want shined. I don't care. The truth is all that matters.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF. What is DCF, you ask? We're the best damn sandwich shop in the universe. Do we sell hoagies? Well, we're DCF, and the F doesn't stand for hoagies. We got 9mm sandwiches, we got beastly baguettes, and we toast buns like no other. Looking for training on bun safety? We got you covered, and our ranges are the best place to test out your new Not sandwich. So get your buns out, cause the sun's out, and let's party! we're not actually a sandwich shop.
$10 billion are stolen every year from Americans by online scammers. Every day, millions of people fall victim to online threats. Over 30 million spam calls are made per day in America, with over 50% of daily emails being considered spam. And that's not all. On average, over 40% of devices are vulnerable to hackers, and each person in America has 10 passwords stolen per year. Can you imagine having unrecoverable credit card debt? Your savings drained to zero, your home foreclosed on, your identity stolen and ruined, your entire life, poof, gone. Introducing Safe and Secure. With the advanced programs, you'll be able to stay in control and keep hackers out. Don't let the cyber criminals win. Safe and Secure. Shield against hackers and embrace peace of mind. Visit PadoxaSNS.com for more information and to learn how to keep yourself protected.
Do you want to get profits from the world's most productive oil basin? Bloomberg calls the Permian Basin the world's most important growth engine for oil production. Now there's a way for everyday investors to collect monthly checks from an incredible oil hotspot. It's not a stock, and it's not an ETF. Instead, you can actually own royalty rights on over 380,000 acres of prime oil and gas fields. The best part? 95% of all income from this investment gets paid directly to investors like you. You can simply sit back and collect the royalty checks month after month. You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. Visit oilboom2025.com to learn more about the opportunity from the Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lichtenfield. That's oilboom2025.com to learn how to start collecting Permian Basin oil royalties today.
So then he goes on to talk about, ailments, her losses, struggles, and then mentions rides in private jets multiple times. Jealous? I mean, I don't know how many times Tina got a ride, but if she got a ride somewhere, it was probably because she needed to get from one place to another safely and quickly. And if someone wants to gift her a ride somewhere on a private jet, I don't see what the problem is. I don't see why a judge would even bring that up. It has nothing to do with them if she flies commercial or flies a private jet. Then discusses, her husband that passed away recently and a son that served admirably and made the ultimate sacrifice. She's a Gold Star mom. She had a Navy SEAL son that passed away in a parachute accident a few years ago, and then very recently lost her husband. So this judge goes over all of that and even says that, her son honored an oath, which is not lost on him when considering the sentencing for Tina. Goes on to say all this and then gives her probably the most severe punishment that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, 9 years of incarceration for shining a light on something that the citizens had no idea of. That's really what this is all about. He said that he was convinced that she'd do it all over again if she could. Well, what person of integrity wouldn't do that? If I know the truth, I'm going to shout it no matter what someone says or does. I'm not going to just decide to lie to everyone because someone puts pressure on me to do so. That's not going to happen. That's not what a person of integrity does. And Tina's a person of integrity, and she's courageous. And she stood up and shouted the truth in spite of all that, no matter who was coming after her. He indicated that she was as defiant as the court could see. Yeah, I would be too if the truth is the truth. Isn't that what courts should be paying attention to? Isn't that what courts should care about, is the truth? He goes on to say that there was no drug abuse and that she was a privileged person. In fact, the quote was, "You are as privileged as they come." How privileged is someone that in their retirement goes to serve their citizens, see something that very much concerns her about the election system, tries to do the right thing to protect and back up those election records, and possibly catch someone in the actually committing a crime with regards to the elections. She took an image. How is that privileged? And then to stand there and share the truth, share what her findings were, and get attacked for it relentlessly by the full force of the media, their local government, state government, and even the federal government. How is that a privileged person exactly? That's not privileged. That's someone that's getting beat up by everyone for bringing the truth out. And I think it's absolutely disgusting for the judge to call that a privileged person. Then he claims that she used her privilege to obtain power, followers, and fame. So let me get this straight. Tina went through this absolute hell, losing her son, losing her husband, losing parts of her family, having her entire county turned against her, the city of Grand Junction turned against her, the media, the state, the feds, probably half the people in this country turned against her. What kind of fame is worth that? Why would she do that? Why would anyone want to obtain that kind of fame? A bunch of people hating you based on lies. That's absurd. Absolutely absurd. And gaining power, what power did she gain? She, in fact, was stripped of power that she had. She's sitting in solitary confinement right now. How much power did she gain there? I think the person that has obtained too much power is not Tina. I think it's the person that just sentenced Tina. And then he goes on to say, you didn't want this attention. You crave it, ma'am. What person would crave being put into solitary confinement after being tortured for 4 years in this rigged, corrupt system full of lies and deception? No one would crave that. I've been around Tina a lot over the past 4 years. If any normal person would probably break down in tears. And Tina's a normal person. And I have seen Tina in vulnerable times. She didn't crave any of this. She's doing what she's doing because she's trying to stand up for the truth and for her fellow citizens. And anyone that has an ounce of integrity should do the same thing. I will do the same thing as well. And I respect very much every other person in this country that has done the same thing. That's what we need. We need more people standing up. We need more whistleblowers. We need more truth. And I just can't believe that this judge is just doing this out of incredible ignorance. There is something far more wrong with what's going on in his head. This stuff is absolutely demonic. And there's just no way that this is a natural thought that this judge had. There's something pushing this. So I'll go on here. He says that she never took her job seriously. How would he know? Did he watch her throughout her entire job from the day she took it, how she revamped the DMV, how she opened up the satellite offices, how she had to clean out corruption that was already in that agency to get things running smoothly? Did he pay attention to any of that? He seems to be quite the expert about what Tina did during her time there. And why would any of that, her history, have anything to do with the sentencing? Then he said one scandal after another. Really, what scandals? Because I'm not aware of a single court case or any scandal that Tina was involved in while she was working as clerk and recorder. So I would love to know what specifically he's referring to with regards to that. And then he says the echo chamber can't be wrong. Well, if the echo chamber is echoing the truth, then no, it can't be wrong. The truth is the truth. Now, there are some people that misinterpreted some things. And when people misinterpret some things, that does cause some confusion. But in the core of this is the citizens have no control over our election systems. Our election officials also don't have control over our election systems. In fact, the very systems they're supposed to control, they don't really have control over. What's going on is corporations and vendors are really running the whole show. And the system's set up in a way that our elections can be manipulated before it even gets to the county. And that's the stuff that most county officials don't even know and can't see, but they're starting to realize it because we're seeing it in the data as we get more evidence of this happening. So he says many things are crystal clear. You are no hero, you abuse your position, and you're a charlatan. That's what he said. She is a hero, absolutely. She didn't abuse her position. She did what I would expect any citizen with integrity and courage to do, which is to blow the whistle when you see a problem. What is wrong with transparency? These systems are supposed to count our votes, and they're supposed to count them transparently. Of course, they don't. They're just black boxes. And when trying to bring light, trying to open up that black box so the citizens can see what's going on inside it, that's when the full force of these demons came against Tina. Because the truth is, these people, this corrupt regime of people, do not want the citizens to realize the amount of control they actually have in these systems. Our election systems, based on everything I've studied in the past 4 years as I traveled the country, sadly, it's an election illusion system. And what's critical for them is that the citizens believe the illusion. Because as long as we believe the illusion, we will accept this system. As soon as that illusion is busted, even cracked a little bit, if we realize it is an illusion, the whole system comes crumbling down because we will no longer support it and we'll get rid of it. And that's what's happening right now. We are living through the times where the citizens are finally realizing that our current election ecosystem is an illusion. That's the problem. And now that we realize it's an illusion, we are going to disassemble the entire thing. And we're going to put it back into the hands of the citizens themselves. And that's what the corrupt people don't want us to do. They love the control that they've got. And they had very subtle control. And they were able to manipulate results in ways that the citizens weren't aware of and most election officials weren't aware of. And that's perfect for them because they need to be subtle. Because we were all asleep and we were all sheep for a very long time, but the sheep have woken up, and Tina was one of the reasons why a lot of the sheep woke up, and that's why they hate her. So he went on to say that no one in this country has absolute power, but it sure seems he tried to wield some absolute power, doesn't it? Says that her power did not provide her the means to conduct her own investigation. How is that? If I'm a clerk and I think there's a problem with the systems that I'm using to conduct an election, I absolutely am going to investigate those systems. It's my duty to do that. And it was Tina's duty to do that as well. She took an oath to do that job. And if I'm representing my citizens, if I'm a servant of my fellow citizens, darn right I'm going to do what it takes to investigate anything that I see is a potential issue. Now, of course, there are proper channels to go through, but if I think those proper channels are compromised, I need to do the right thing for my citizens. She took an image of a voting system. Ultimately, she took an image of the voting system. She didn't manipulate an election. She didn't steal anything. She looked inside the black box, and then she allowed us to look inside the black box, and that's why they're coming down on her. He says that she has no respect. That's ridiculous. I know Tina. She has an incredible amount of respect. He indicated that she's lockstep in her beliefs. I'll agree there. She is lockstep in her beliefs. And I'm okay with that because I agree in her beliefs. I believe that our elections should be run by the people, and I believe they should be transparent and verifiable, every single vote. I believe our elections should be simple, so simple that every single American citizen that depends on our elections can understand every part of it and be able to verify the accuracy of every single vote by an eligible voter. That's normal. That's what we should have. We don't have that. So then he goes on to say, you have no qualms because you're innocent. Of course, being facetious. You didn't do anything wrong, just doing your job. And I'll tell you what, I don't think she did anything wrong. I think she was doing her job. In fact, she did her job better than most any other clerk because she stood up against this and she blew the whistle and she looked deeper. She didn't just take what she was told and accept it. She looked deeper into it to determine if it was real or not. And when her citizens brought to her attention a potential issue, and when she saw a potential issue, she didn't just ignore it. She didn't sweep it under the rug. She didn't take the deals that she was offered when people told her. In fact, the Secretary of State of Colorado, I think, sent her some communication, basically stated, if you apologize and tell everyone there's nothing wrong, and I'm paraphrasing, tell everyone there's nothing wrong, then we'll let you off the hook. Tina didn't take that deal because Tina is not going to cave because Tina is a woman of integrity. So then he goes on to say, just more lies. No objective person believes them. I'll tell you what, I'm very objective. And I believe what Tina says because I have seen what Tina says with my own eyes. So it's not just Tina saying it. I've seen this. In fact, I was one of the lead examiners on Mesa Reports 1 and 2. So I can talk about Mesa Reports 1 and 2 quite a bit, and I know quite a bit about them because I did every bit of that work. And I took part in writing those reports. And I have no problem going over all that with anyone. In fact, I sat down with Wayne Williams, the previous Secretary of State of Colorado, and the guy that when they took Tina out of her position, I think illegally, they put Wayne Williams in her place to run Mesa County elections. Well, I sat down with Wayne about a month and a half ago, and I showed Wayne the evidence that Mesa Reports 1 and 2 were based off of. And even Wayne was surprised. Even Wayne said he'd like to know more about this. How, after all these years, did Wayne not even read Reports 1 and 2? He told me that no one had ever showed him any evidence. I've been here the whole time. If anyone was curious, they could have just asked. It's been out there. I've done countless videos with it. So for someone to say they haven't seen it, they've got their head buried in the sand, especially for someone that was previous Secretary of State and the sole person responsible for bringing Dominion into the entire state of Colorado. How on earth did he not look at this? For someone that was asked and paid over $30,000 to take Tina's place to run the elections in Mesa County, Colorado, don't you think that person would be curious to see what Tina found? Curious to look at these reports and investigate this, considering he was the one that brought Dominion in the first place? I would have. Odd that he didn't. And then after I showed it to him about a month and a half ago in person, he said he wanted to know more. Send me an email. So I sent him an email. He didn't respond. I sent him another email. He didn't respond. So I guess he doesn't really want to see more. But I'd be kind of worried if I were him too, because he's not going to be in the greatest position when the rest of the state and country realizes what he did. And that he's actually looked at it now and chose to ignore it even at that point. But there's a lot more about Wayne Williams that I think people need to know anyway. But back to this here. So the judge goes on to say that she shows you over all else. You cannot help but lie, and it's easy as it is for you as it is to breathe. That's a very disgusting statement. And why would any judge make a statement such as that? He says that nobody says you can't question, that you can't ask. Well, really, because she questioned and she asked. No one answered. And in fact, instead, trashed her and then incarcerated her. So I guess when you say you can question and you can ask, I guess you can, except you'll be incarcerated for it. That's basically what's happened. That's exactly what he did. He says the damage that he caused continues to be caused is not all too different from the violence that the court sees on a daily basis. Isn't that crazy? The damage she caused. She got people to start paying attention to how our election system works. That's the damage? Give me a break. Then he says she made every effort to undermine trust in our elections. That's ridiculous. She brought transparency to a part of our elections. The fact that there is a lack of transparency is actually what undermined the trust in elections. When people finally realize they can't see what's going on, they don't have control over what's going on, that's what undermined the trust. The people that hid all this from us undermine the trust. The people that attacked the whistleblowers that brought this information forward, those people undermine the trust. In fact, this judge has undermined a lot of people's trust in our entire judicial system, which is really disgusting. Because I used to think judges were the most honorable people that existed. And after seeing this person and realizing this person is allowed to be called a judge, now I got to question everyone. And there's got to be really good judges out there. I would hope that a majority of judges really are truly honest and good people. But this one certainly is not. He says that he's at peace with all the decisions he made. He's considered all these other things, probation and community corrections, etc. And then he goes on to sentence Tina. And he goes on to sentence her for counts 1 and 4, 3.5 years in Department of Corrections. Count 2, 3.5 years consecutive. Then count 6 was 15 months in Department of Corrections. And then count 8, 120 days in Mesa County detention. And then 9 and 10, 6 months in Mesa County detention, which he says 8.5 years total. And then 3 years of parole after all that. Absolutely disgusting. And he based his sentencing on what the jury found in this case. And I have some problems here because I've been begging to testify on behalf of Tina. I've been begging to bring this truth forward. I've not been allowed to, other than for a few minutes to talk about BIOS passwords. That's it. I've got years of information I want to bring forward. I've got years of truth that people need to see. But the powers that be do not want people like me talking the truth. They don't want people like me sharing the truth with the rest of the public or with the jury. Because if the jury knew what the truth was, they never would have ruled like they did. And speaking of that, there are some people that got to testify. One of them was Gerald Wood. So I want to play Gerald Wood's. It's important because Gerald Wood perjures himself on the stand and lies to the judge and lies to the jury. So, Paulo, if you could roll that video, and then we'll come back and talk about that one here in a sec.
At any point in time leading up to May 25th, 2021, did you give any permission to have your identity used for unlawful purposes or for any purpose? Did you give Tina Peters that authority, that permission?
I assume you mean used by someone else?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Did you give her your consent to have your identity used by somebody else?
I did not.
Did you give it any permission to Belinda Knisley for your identity to be used by somebody else?
No, I did not.
Or Sandy Brown?
No.
Have you ever met a person by the name of Conan James Hayes?
I don't believe so. I know Ms. Peters has stated that I met him at the symposium. I have no recollection of that. I rubbed elbows with a lot of people standing in line with food, had a lot of conversations. I don't recall ever meeting someone with that name.
Did you give any permission or authorization to Tina Peters to have the badge that was issued by Mesa County government to be used by somebody other than you?
No.
Pretty incredible. So let me tell you about Jerry Wood. Gerald Wood. On that first symposium where I met Tina, Gerald Wood was there. And I actually met with him in a room across the street from where the event was. And I was face to face with Jerry Wood. And he told me that he was in on the whole thing. He told me that he was in on the planning. He knew exactly what was going on. And just so people know what the whole thing was, the Secretary of State and Voting System Vendor Dominion, we're going to come up and put this thing on called a trusted build onto the election system. Tina was worried that them putting the trusted build onto this system, of course, they call it trusted, right? So people trust it. But she was worried that if they put the trusted build on the system, that it would potentially harm the information that was already in the voting system. And what was in the voting system were elections previous. The 2020 election was also on there, which happened months prior. All the processing, all the stuff that happened in the black box was sitting on that system. So if the Secretary of State and the Voting System Vendor Dominion came up and they did something to harm that information, then if anyone had to investigate that information, there would be no way to do that. So she had an image taken. Now she asked her county staff to take that image of the voting system, like take a full backup, not just a backup of a few election files, the full backup, everything on the hard drive. And her county IT said that they could not do that because they didn't know how to properly do it. It wasn't their system. So she was forced to find someone else to do it. So she asked around and someone mentioned Gerald Wood. So she asked Gerald, can you do this? And apparently he said yes. And then at some point, he said that he didn't have the tools to do it or couldn't do it for some reason or another. So the plan was to bring in another person that did have the tools and know how to do it and had experience doing it. Maybe Jerry didn't have experience. I don't know. But for whatever reason, there was a plan for this other person to come in. And Gerald's Wood ID allegedly got used to bring this other person in. Gerald Wood was part of that. And the other person was mentioned here, Conan Hayes. That was the other person. And they had all worked together to plan this, the backup of the system, to preserve the records in case the Secretary of State and voting system vendor and their actions caused damage to the information that was on that system. So he absolutely knew it. He told me he did it. And he was getting ready to fly back to Colorado and asked me if I had a Faraday bag he could put his phone in because he was worried about someone, I guess, tracking him with his phone or something like that. So someone that's surprised that this all happened, it'd be very odd for them to admit that they were part of it and ask for Faraday bag and actually be there at the symposium with all of us anyway. So Gerald Wood absolutely lied on the stand to the judge and to the jury. He was in on the planning. He told me face to face that he was in on the planning. He absolutely knew who Conan Hayes was. And look how he answered that question when he says, did you know Conan Hayes? Have you ever met anyone named Conan James Hayes? He says, I don't think so. I don't recall ever meeting someone with that name. Give me a break. This guy absolutely perjured himself. And if the jury based their opinion off of what this guy said alone, then they ruled incorrectly. And I don't know what the circumstances are for someone lying to an entire jury of people that ends up causing an innocent woman to be incarcerated for 9 years, but it should be pretty great. And I would like Jerry Wood to come clean. I would like him to be honest about it all. I mean, the truth is the truth. It's going to come out. So, Jerry, you can either come out and give everyone the truth, or we can just keep bearing you with evidence. I've got text messages from you. There's other messages from you. You are Trebuchet. We can go into the whole Trebuchet thing too. That's when he has a nickname on Signal Chat called Trebuchet, and he was communicating with people under this pseudonym Trebuchet. And then, of course, in the trial, he claims he doesn't know what Trebuchet is. He has no recollection of it. Well, I've got text messages from Jerry Wood under the name of Trebuchet with a picture of him and his wife. Jerry, you lied. You need to come clean. How can you sleep at night knowing that what you lied about, what you said, took part in putting this innocent woman in prison? You are a disgusting human being. You have an opportunity to turn that around. If you don't, I tell you what, the truth is going to bury you far worse than you feel right now. So I really hope you take that chance to do that. So I wanted to go into the writ of habeas corpus now, which was just filed a little bit ago on behalf of Tina. And we only have a couple minutes left. So I'll probably do that on a following show here. But I want to show you how to get to this information anyway. So if you go to Tina's website, it's tinapeters.us, and you click on court filings, you can actually pull up all these court filings. They're all right here. And the original indictment, Fed document, or docket, Tina Peters versus Merrick Garland, Jenna Griswold, and Dan Rubenstein, where Tina actually sued them. And then the writ of habeas corpus is right here. You can click on that and view it. And if you're also curious about other information, there's some declarations, affidavits, the forensic reports that I mentioned, 1, 2, right here. These are the ones that I worked on. 3 is Walter Doherty and Jeff O'Donnell. And then there's a fact check right here on the Mesa County DA. Basically, it's a rebuttal to the fake investigation that Rubenstein did. So that's where you can find that information. Here is the writ here, and I'll go into details on this in the future because I think it's very important to go over every point of this as well. And I've already summarized it all, so we don't have to read a bunch of legal jargon. And then again, we've got the Let My Tina Go event. And what I'd like you to do is share letmytinago.us with everyone you know on social media. Text everyone you know, email everyone you know, post. We need to bring massive attention to this. A lot of our J6 prisoners, thank goodness, have been released from their political persecution. But Tina Peters, our other hero that has been a little bit forgotten, we need to unforget her. We need to bring her back into the spotlight, and we need to do everything we can to bring Tina out of where she's at, back into the world with the rest of us. We have to do this. We have no choice. Thank you.
Hi, Tina Peters here.
See, today they go after you if you're investigating.
Yeah.